There is one race in our state that is going to be moving to the December 6th runoff. That is the race for the United States Senate between Senator Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker.
Election night has come and gone, but we were left with more questions as control of Congress is still not clear. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Josh Rowe.
And I'm Kim Chapman-Whitfield. As you just heard from Georgia Secretary of State, the U.S. Senate race there is headed to a runoff. Here's a look at the final numbers for you. A little more than 30,000 votes separate Warnock and Walker. And since neither took more than 50% of the vote, it automatically triggered that runoff.
All that has some wondering what kind of turnout we could see for the runoff.
News Channel 9's Sam Pena joins us here in the studio with more on that. Sam.
Kim, Josh, we're seeing shades of the 2020 election right now, where Warnock also went to a runoff election. Now take a look at some of these numbers right here. This is from the first general election back in 2020. You can see that Warnock led the pack with 32% of the vote, but that meant that there was about 2 million votes right here that were undecided and were divided up between other candidates. Now those votes went up for grabs in the runoff. Now let's take a look at this year's number. We can see similarities, but a stark contrast. Both Warnock and Walker are at about 49%, meaning this year there's only about 81,000 votes that are available right now. It's a critical margin that could make all the difference.
There's still a little work yet to do.
A razor-thin race headed to OT.
Just hang in there a little bit longer.
With Herschel Walker and Senator Raphael Warnock both failing to cross 50% of the vote plus one needed to win, a runoff election will take place December 6th.
So ballots are being built as we speak.
Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger says they are already preparing since time is tight, and there are 150,000 absentee ballots ready to go.
Early voting must begin no later than Monday, November 28th in all counties.
With 4 extra weeks, Walker and Warnock now turn their attention to the 81,000 ballots cast for Libertarian candidate Chase Oliver and how they can bring those voters to their side.
The typical advice would be to sort of moderate, to try to appeal to the median voter.
UTC poli-sci professor Chris Acuff says the winning campaign has 2 missions: appealing to independent voters.
Obviously, a lot of Americans identify as independents, and in Georgia, about 2% of the voters identify as libertarian.
And ensuring carryover from the November 8th election.
Or independent-minded voters may not show up and vote again. Their preferred party is not on the ballot. So a lot of times it really just comes down to who can motivate their base to show up.
In the 2020 election, 4.9 million Georgians cast ballots in the Senate race. But in the runoff 1 month later, only 4.4 million returned.
Typically in special elections, we see lower turnout in general. For whatever reason, people aren't as engaged. There aren't as many advertisements. Parties aren't necessarily making as broad appeals.
But Acuff says carryover could be stronger in 2022, with record-breaking early voting numbers, providing Georgians more time to decide.
The Secretary of State's office will likely start putting out information on early voting, and early voting will start. Absentee ballots will start.
It's a new era for the American trucking industry. You no longer need a Peterbilt, Kentworth, or contract with Old Dominion. Now, an F-250 with a gooseneck trailer will put money in your pocket.
You guys don't know who I am. I am Hotshot Benny, and I started a trucking company with my dad. No, we don't drive no semi-trucks. We drive pickup trucks.
Just search Hotshot Trucking, and you'll find countless videos to help you haul a lucrative load.
Pick that up right there. It's only 120 pounds. Paying $800.
Take this website, for example, uship.com. It's kind of like a Craigslist for hotshot truckers. This ad here is offering at least $900 for you to take this ambulance from Tennessee to Florida.
Hotshot trucking reminds me of like the Wild West.
Thomas Wasson is an enterprise trucking carrier expert with FreightWaves in Chattanooga.
You're in a situation where folks are getting out with, instead of an 18-wheeler, you're literally using a heavy-duty, super-duty pickup truck, and you have a trailer between 20 and maybe 40 feet, and you're doing just crazy same-day loads.
Here's the kicker. Depending on the load, you don't need a commercial driver's license or CDL to operate a hotshot. Most commercial vehicle drivers, though, are required to have a CDL. Take it straight from the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, quote, because it requires special skills and knowledge.
If you're a small mom-and-pop construction company and you know a guy with a pickup, Sure, but when something goes wrong, if an accident occurs and there's legal liability, just like trucking and hot shots, when you're hauling a lot of things, there's a high risk that you can get in big trouble if you don't have all your paperwork in order.
If you're 26,000 pounds or less, the Tennessee Highway Patrol says you don't need a CDL. We took those concerns to THP Sergeant Cecil Harvey.
So do you think that not having that CDL, could that contribute to a lack of education for those drivers?
Usually if someone goes into business on their own, they still have to show that they're able to operate that vehicle.
Sergeant Harvey thinks hotshot trucking is just as safe on the roads as semis because there's enough oversight, even though the braking and safety equipment, loads, and driver qualifications are all a bit different. Turns out they are regulated the same way and subject to the same inspections.
We can't be perfect with everything, but yes, we do regulate and do the best that we can.
That goes for crashes as well, like this one on I-75 near Ottawa earlier this year. The latest state data from 2020 shows there were more than 12,000 crashes involving large trucks, and 1 in 6 of all deadly crashes involved large trucks. Sergeant Harvey says it is impossible to tell how many of these are hot shots.
So there wouldn't be a way to determine the number of crashes involving semis versus hot shots?
Right, because they're all commercial motor vehicles.
All teachers in the state of Tennessee must pass the Education Teacher Performance Assessment, whether they have a degree in another field or they're in the process of student teaching. And it's no secret that teachers are in high demand right now, and the Tennessee Board of Education is looking at ways to bring and keep teachers in our classrooms. But at what cost?
It's one of the places that we think that we can make some sensible changes to better streamline the pathway for these candidates.
Sarah Morrison with the Tennessee Board of Education talking about one piece of the puzzle to keep teachers in our schools. Job-embedded candidates are those teachers working with a mentor in the classroom and account for 800 to 900 of the roughly 3,000 newly certified teachers each year. J.C. Bowman with the Professional Educators of Tennessee says preparation for the EdTPA exam takes away from the time these future teachers could be spending in the classroom.
And while you're in the process of doing your student teaching, you have to do a series of videos on your lesson plans. You're doing a video of yourself teaching, and then you have to do a written analysis of your instructional practices, which is something like 60 pages.
Bowman believes that this assessment creates barriers that prevent people from getting into teaching. But others say it's a way to make sure that teachers are ready.
I didn't see anyone from the state board present data as to why. 1 year ago, the state board staff is saying we need to, and the Tennessee Department of Ed is saying we need to have the highest EdTPA scores in the country. That's just 1 year ago. Now we don't need it at all.
Estes says not every district across the state is currently dealing with teacher shortages, and eliminating this is not necessarily a way to improve the quality of our teachers.
This may not be the best policy, blanket policy for the whole state to solve it.
Although the board may be trying to bring more teachers in our schools, some recent graduates say they wouldn't feel prepared without all the current prep work.
I think it was like a natural barrier for me not to be a teacher, in a sense of it takes a certain level of expertise.